Hi, everyone. This is Brittany from Made for Math. Thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to be covering the meaning of percent and going in, and I also be talking about how to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. So here at Made for Math, the first thing we like to do with new vocabulary is break down the meaning of the word. Percent comes from the Latin root percentum, which means by the hundred. So I did a lesson on ratios, and so you could rewatch that lesson, but to understand how we could write a percent, we could write it as a ratio of a percent out of 100, or we also could say it's a fraction, a quantity out of a total of 100. So how can we remember that percentum or percent means out of 100? Well, if we tie it to some other words that we know that have the word cent in them, for example, centennial is 100 years. We could also think of money, such as 100 cents. We know it takes 100 cents or 100 pennies to make $1. So those are two good examples that will help you remember what percent means. Also, if we can relate it to real life, where do we see percents in real life? Well, percents are all around us. Just a few examples. For example, chance of rain. When you watch the weather report, it's a 20% chance of rain. So that means 20 out of 100. So it's pretty low chance. For example, when we go shopping, we see all kinds of percents for discounts and coupons. They're having a sale, 50% off. The last example, grades. When students are given test scores or quizzes, often teachers give them a grade as a percent. They made 100% on the test. They got all of the questions correct. So percent is a really important concept to grasp because we see percents all around us in our everyday lives. So now I'm just going to do a quick introduction to how we can convert between fractions, decimals, and percents using this hundreds grid. So as you can see in this grid, there are 100 little squares. So I'm actually going to take the numbers off and leave it like this. And I'm going to show you, we're going to start with these basic percentages. I call these benchmark percents because these are good ones just to memorize or know in our head without really having to do the conversion. So the first one I'm going to model is 25%. Well, for every percentage, there should be an equivalent fraction and an equivalent decimal. Because remember, decimals are just a type of fraction. And because percents are out of 100, we can easily convert it from a fraction to a decimal since it's out of a multiple of 10, which is our base 10 place value system. So if I want to model 25%, I know that that means 25 out of 100. So what that looks like on this grid is shading in 2 rows of 10, which makes 20, and then 5 more. Because visually I can now see 25 out of 100 squares are red. Now, I can also simplify this fraction. If you think about it, remember simplifying a fraction just means how could I make that fraction using less pieces? So if I think about this in terms of money, 25 out of 100, a common factor these two have is 25. So if I wrote this as 1 times 25 over $1, which is 4 quarters, 4 times 25. This is what we call it, made for math, a copycat 1. This is a quantity of 1 right here. So that quantity of 1 can be canceled out, and what's left is the simplified fraction, which is 1/4. So we know 1/4 is equivalent to the percent 25%, or the fraction 25/100ths. I could also write that as a decimal fraction of 0.25, 25 cents or 25/100ths. Okay. Now, I could also model 50%. So if I'm going to change this to blue for the 50%. 50% I know would be 5 rows of 10. Just like that. And visually, you can almost see what that fraction is going to be simplified to. If you can tell, exactly 1/2 of my 100 squares are shaded. I could also, though, use that factoring method and write this as 1 times 50 over 2 times 50, because 2 groups of 50 make 100. There's that common factor. And quantity of 1, again, it can cancel out, and we're left with 1/2. So 1/2 is the same as 50/100ths, which is the same as 50%. And then finally, we could also write that as a decimal quantity. Often we say 50 cents. Or remember, with decimals, we could also write this as 5/10, because I know 5/10, 5 of these complete rows is equivalent to 50/100ths. Or we could think of it as 5 dimes is the same as 50 pennies. So either of these decimal numbers would be equivalent to 50%. Okay, let's move on to 75%. 75% would be 75 out of 100. Okay, so that's what 75% would look like. As a fraction, I could write it as 75 out of 100. Okay, and again, if I think of it in terms of quarters or money, they have a common factor of 25. 75 cents is 3 quarters, and $1 is 4 quarters. So when I cancel out this copycat quantity of 1, 25 over 25, we're left with the simplest form, 3/4. So 3/4 is the same as 75%. And how do I write that as a decimal? 0.75. And then finally, I have 100%. I'm going to go ahead and just extend this. So 100%, well, that would be 100 out of 100. I got 100 out of 100 points on my test. So you can see right there, you have that quantity of 1. I got all of it correct. So 100% is actually equal to 1 whole. If you wanted to write it as a decimal, you could write it as 1.0. Okay, so just a little introduction to percents and their equivalent fraction and decimals. So if you would like to learn more, I'll be making another video very soon, continuing on this percent concept. I hope everyone has a great day. And if you're interested in learning more about what we have to offer at Made for Math, feel free to check out our website at www.madeformath.com. Have a great day.